Good morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Tuesday, the 17th day of June, 2025, Tuesday of the 11th week of the year, the 11th week in Ordinary Time. And so today, because it's a bit foggy and kind of drizzly and rainy and everything else like that, doing it from the back patio of the friary here in Beach Haven. So it's always very nice. They do a very good job keeping it nice and lush and summery with plants and things like that. And it's just coming into its own right now. There'll be more as the summer goes on. But this is the back patio right over here, and the friary is right there, all of it in all its glory. But on this Tuesday of the 11th week of the year, 2 Corinthians, we move into chapter 8, which I've spoken about this before. It's a very interesting chapter because here we move into the discussion of the great collection for Jerusalem. So again, whenever we wonder about why is the church always asking for money, well, it began asking for money way back when, almost at the beginning. And so the church in Jerusalem, which is undergoing a lot of difficulties and upsets and things like that, again, because the church in Jerusalem is daring to think differently, than Judaism, or trying to fulfill Judaism, and there's a lot of resistance, of course, to that. And so in these other Christian communities that have begun to grow throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, Paul is now beginning to send letters and emissaries, to peoples, to these communities, to basically ask for help and funding. The church in Jerusalem, again, the source of everything this movement is about. And within it, too, he is sending this man named Titus, for whom a letter will also be written individually, or he will write a letter back and forth. So he will write a letter himself about what it means to be a believer, within the world and things like that. But that comes much later. But currently, Paul is writing to the Corinthians, sending them Titus, and saying, again, talking about the theology of what it means to give. Again, about this abundance, again, that Christ had for us in emptying himself and becoming one like us. It's the same thing that we should model in our own kind of emptying of ourselves to help, our brothers and sisters in need. Again, this extension of ourselves into the lives of others is always part and parcel of what it means to be, a believer in this world, an actual believer, an authentic believer, a working believer in this world. If we do not give, if we do not help each other, if we do not work towards sustaining and nurturing each other, then again, we fail in our mission, and we fail in the ability to witness to the world. Again, what it means to act, differently in this world, and not oftentimes in the selfish and egotistical ways in which the world acts. And so in this reading, he gives the example of the Macedonians, again, who I guess have taken on this idea of giving very well and are very good at it. And he's now trying to tell the Corinthians to do the same. The Corinthians should model what the Macedonians did. Again, the Corinthians, were always a central community to really helping Paul to think out some of his understanding about Christ and his resurrection and what it means now to live a different kind of life if we dare to believe, again, that Christ is truly risen from the dead. And so the Corinthians kind of sometimes become a scapegoat for things that they're not doing right, but everybody else is doing, right. But it's helping the theology of Paul and his understanding of what it means to be a believer in the world to be refined even more by seeing what happens in the church in Corinth, and seeing what happens in the church in Corinth, and allowing it, to embrace, again, its understanding of faith beautifully. Sometimes this happens. Again, people are made scapegoats in this world because, again, they become people who help us to see the more that we sometimes miss, and help us to see the more that sometimes, again, we are afraid to enact in our own lives. And this is where the Corinthians begin to serve that wonderful purpose of opening us up to the more, as they are encouraged to give to the church in Jerusalem in Paul's letter. In the gospel for today, in Matthew's gospel, again, Jesus talks about love, and again, this is the all-encompassing, richness and wonder and beauty of what it means to love. It is not just something that can be limited to friends and to family and those who love us back. Again, those who commit sin, Jesus says, to do the same, but that you love and pray, especially for even your enemies and those who hurt you and harm you, because that's not what people do all the time, and that's never what people come to think as being an appropriate way to respond to sometimes the pain we experience in our lives that others inflict upon us. But Jesus, again, now tells us, again, it has to be about love, it has to be about love, it has to be about love. As we move into the second week, departing from the Easter season properly, again, that echo of love continues. Christ's resurrection is an act of love, and out of that act of love, Christ encourages us to never stop loving and never fearing to love, because that love has the power to produce things unimaginable. A continued blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.